in the studios at Q95, the big station. So we're live on Facebook and YouTube. So please share the live, like our page, get the latest breaking news and happenings as it happens, only on Q95, the big station. My guests tonight are Dr. Irving Andre, EWP leader Lennox Linton, and attorney Gabriel Christian. We are continuing our efforts at reviving the spirit of graciousness, of love, of peace, of prosperity, and unity among our Dominican, Kalinago, and Afro Caribbean brothers and sisters. All people. Tonight, we tackle the issues of service, servitude, civility, sycophancy, and sutiware. We want your views, so please call us. Here are some talking points that we're going to look at tonight. What happened to the value and the virtue of service above self? Remember we were taught those things when we were growing up in Dominica? What is the true cost of civility? Should we make personal sacrifices to achieve our ambitions and our independence rather than just wait to receive handouts and perpetuate our dependency and mendicancy? What does it profit a man or a woman if he or she gains the whole world but loses his or her soul? So, what happens to you after you have received your 30 pieces of silver? What are you doing for your country? Are you still waiting to see what your country will do for you? Why do you choose to engage in misleading yourself with sycophancy and necromancy? Why is man so unjust to his fellow man? He never used to be like that. Do we even know who to trust? And is it true that if there is no sutiware, there might be no volley? So Justice Dr. Irving Andre, UWP leader Lennox Linton, attorney Gabriel Christian will help us identify some of these specific issues, the concerns, the experiences, the situations, the occurrences, events, and hopefully some answers associated with these important questions. They will discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and the dangerous. As usual, no anger, no malice, no personal attacks, no vilification, no divisiveness. But simply bringing back civility, caring society, and good governance, recognizing the imperative for justice without delays. Of course, looking for the resilience and sustainability of our Afro-Caribbean and Kalinago brothers and sisters. So yes, man to man is very unjust, and we really just don't know who to trust. We don't know who to trust on the question of the proliferation of this crisis of governance that we face with, on honorary motions for honorary doctorates, yes, honorary motions for honorary doctorates in the parliament, on kidnappings, on unaccounted billions, on human rights abuses, on jailing the opposition members. Somebody's mic is, or somebody might want to mute their mic and getting some noises coming through, on cheating at elections, on drug dealings, and on money laundering, on unprofessional policing, on abuse of procurement laws, unfair distribution and waste of state resources, unjust and unequal parliamentary privilege. So, yes, the voices of the Dominican people, your voice at home and abroad, take priority tonight on what you see as a solution to fix these persistent retrogressive issues, challenges, and concerns. So stay tuned to this space for another great debate. Get the answers to your questions. So be part of this solution. Wherever you are in Dominica, in the region, and globally, join this conversation right now on the Global View on Q and have your say as you do every Tuesday with me, Mr. G, only on Q95, the big station. So as usual, let's extend a huge shout out and hugs and much love and appreciation and a big thank you to our healthcare providers and frontline workers. We know they're doing their best to keep us safe from all these deadly viruses and the variants, and they're often working under very difficult conditions. So please follow the correct advice, the guidelines, and protocols. Play it safe, stay alive. So happy to have you with us tonight. We welcome you warmly and embrace you wherever you are in every nook and cranny, in every village, every community in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you again to our engineer Sherwin Norris, keeping us on the air in crystal clear liquid stereo, and to Lambert Lambi Charles on the console, Q95 directing the traffic. I'm sure Lambi will direct your calls to us a little later. So because we make the people's voice a priority tonight, we will take your calls. We will likely stop to have for 3 breaks. We'll do a little ad from Netcliffe, and then we'll take we'll give you the numbers and we'll take your calls. We'll probably break 3 times so that Lambi can take your calls. I'm sure will be delighted to have your interactions with us tonight. So let's get started. And let me just go first to Justice Irving Andre to get the conversation started tonight as we pursue our goal of, as we say, reviving the spirit of graciousness, of love, of peace, of prosperity, and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters, all Dominican people. And as we explore the consequential issues of service, of sacrifice, civility, sycophancy, and sutiwe, I'm sure Dr. Irving Andre will explain to us what that word, sutiwe, means. But as you get started, I mean, Dr. Andre, you can take the opportunity to comment on any specific issue or issues that may have caught your interest or attention, and then we'll circle back into tonight's topic. So let me just yield over to you, Dr. Andre, and good night.
Good evening, Mr. G. I hope you can hear me clearly.
We're hearing you very, very clearly. As usual, your voice is getting more powerful every day. You seem to be getting younger every day. But
I'll tell you, there's nothing like eating Johnny cakes without flour.
no,
Anyway, but let me say good evening to Lambi, to Sherwin, to your wonderful listeners. We are one day in the aftermath of Pentecost Monday. And for Pentecost Monday, most of us enjoyed a day of jubilation, a day of libation, a day of sea bathing, a day of relaxation, and others perhaps did or put in a day of service, whether to the elderly, whether to the young, whether to those who lack the ability to help themselves, whether to do charitable work. And this is the type of service that we speak of when we speak of unselfish service. Now, service could be defined as voluntary activity on behalf of your fellow man, on behalf of your government, on behalf of others. Service to country is best epitomized by that famous quote of John F. Kennedy when he said something to the effect that you should ask not what your country or your pal rep can do for you. You should ask what you can do for your country. And he aspired and he spoke to the noble parts of human beings. And the message was so acceptable and so popular that it inspired the formation of the Peace Corps movement, with hundreds or thousands of Americans, young Americans, I should say, dedicated their time, their service, their skills to the betterment of those less fortunate in their hemisphere. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about unflinching, unselfish service. We're talking about service either the king, well, forget about the king, but certainly the country. We're talking about service which has not been seduced by the siring of silver, as in 30 pieces of them. We're talking about service or offering our services not to those who can give us something, but, Mr. G, to those who have nothing to give. That is the test of the authenticity and integrity of service. You're assisting not those who can give you something in return, which may be the justification for your service, but those who cannot give you anything in return. And something comes to mind, Mr. G. As I'm getting old, things pop up in my memory. Following the 2000 general elections, there was an investigation into corruption into the UWP administration. The lawyer was Tony Astafan. He proclaimed with pious exhilaration that he was doing the investigation free of charge. Mr. G, in late 2001, somebody called Ambrose George disclosed in the parliament that from February 2000, less than a month after the government was sworn in, to late 2001, the gentleman's company, or his family company, had received over $208,000 of duty-free concessions for the importation of furniture and fittings. So, Mr. G, the service I'm talking about is not that type of transaction, not that type of self-serving transaction, not that type of transaction where you become a predator on the state and on the state coffers. We're talking about service which is not engendered, motivated, animated, caused by naked, cynical self-interest. In many parts of Dominica today, you see persons helping others, those who are sick, Mr. G, whether in hospitals or other institutions, helping with no expectation of reward or return. And Dominica was based on that type of selfless service. We developed a whole cadre of organizations dedicated to perpetuating that type of service. I'm thinking about the Brownies. Oh, Mr. G, somebody told me you were a Brownie, but I have no independent verification of that. The Cadets. Gabriel Christian can tell us about that. The Duke of Edinburgh Award and other organizations dedicated to one primary objective: to lend your brother a helping hand in whatever way you can. Mr. G, isn't that the lesson of the parable of the 10 lepers?
Mm-hmm.
No, the father, he did not go to the high priest. He did not go to the Pharisees and said, Garçon, let me give you something. Let me give you a bunch of bananas. Let me give you some duty-free concessions. He went to the lowest of the low. But that is not all. Didn't he extend service to the prostitutes of the day, the castaways, those who had nothing, those who were prosecuted, those who were prosecuted, those who were victimized, those against whom the law was weaponized? These are the folks, Mr. G, that he tried to extend service to. And that is the lesson that we have to learn when we speak of service. It is the lesson we have to learn when we speak of sacrifice. It is a lesson we have to learn when we think of sycophants in office who proclaim piously, he is our king. I see no fault in him, Mr. G. I'm not talking about you, no, Gaso. You know,
Talking about Gabriel?
he is our king, but Gabriel does look like a king, come to think of it. I see no fault in him. He did nothing. And that takes me to another contention, another part of my presentation, Mr. G. That here in Dominica, we have many intellectual Brahmins. Brahmins are the priestly caste in India. These are folks, you remember growing up, Mr. G, I don't know about you, I know you had a gold one, I had a brass one. The little brass statue with the 3 monkeys, Mr. G. Our intellectual Brahmins. They see no evil. They hear no evil. They speak no evil. They turn their noses at wrongdoing in Dominica and thereby throw themselves headlong and with great pride into the category that you refer to as sooty. In my parlance, Mr. Gregoire, it doesn't mean suit. You can look at the word suit, T-wear. Suit, it doesn't mean the expensive suits that Gabriel Christian wears every day.
I
It
agree.
doesn't mean the person who exclaims with great joy when he sees those suits and he says, Ebe, where? It doesn't mean that. It means those who enable wrongdoing in your own country. So Dominica has that special class, the intellectual Brahmins, the intellectual high priests who turn their noses at overwhelming evidence of wrongdoing in Dominica. And the question is this, Mr. G. Where do you want to place your bag of coals, as the old people would say? Where are you going to shake your bag of coals? What is your response to wrongdoing when you see it? In what camp do you fall? The camp of the sooty-wares? The camp where you become an advocate for service? Let me give you a little experience I had years ago, Mr. G. Now you can tell me shut up at any time, that's fine. I just had a glass of soursop juice, Mr. G. So it has given me a little spring in my step, so to speak.
Oh, I was wondering what was causing all this thing there.
A famous doctor, the poor fella, he's transitioned, once told me, Irving, I'd known him, he's not my contemporary, he went to school with my father. He said to me, it pains him when poor people,
I don't know if it's the government that's messing up, but we're having a lot of interruption.
all right, okay,
Well, I'm not hearing any interruptions though.
all right. If you hear an interruption, Gabu, is I'm clearing my throat as I wish in safe passage to the soursop juice I consumed a little earlier. But I hope that is the reason. Are you with me?
Yes, we're there. We're hearing you very clearly.
A famous doctor told me, nothing pains him as much when poor people see it necessary to bring to him the choicest cuts of the slaughtered calf, the biggest eggs of the hens, the little pullets that deliver so often on a daily basis, the best part of the bunch of bananas. And he said to me, I don't need it. I can buy it, but they're giving it to me. That's what this doctor is telling me. And he told me in response, he started to do, or he continued doing in-house service in terms of his medical practice. And he told me about one case in Maho where the person he was visiting um, uh, was thought to be a Sukuya. And somebody told me a Sukuya is somebody dressed in masquerade clothing, jumping up and putting asafoetida on a broom, but I don't know. And he told me he entered that person because it was the practice. If he was entering a home by one of those persons, you entered backwards. You don't walk into the home, you reversed into the home. And in that home, there was no rosaries, there was no there's no crucifixes, nothing. And he told me thenceforth he got the reputation of being someone who, quote unquote, who dealing. But he continued his service. He continued to serve those who could not have had the means to pay for his services. And he said he felt a compunction to do that. Where, Mr. G, has genuine selfless service gone? Where has it fled to? As old Frank Barron used to say, has it fled to brutish beasts? If it has fled, why has it fled? What has killed it? What has suffocated it? What has annihilated it? Where has it gone? This is the question that we have to address ourselves this evening. Where has it gone? And if it has gone somewhere, how can we bring it back in its glory and it's in its magnificence? And it is on that note that I pause. Thank you.
Yes, and thanks a lot for that wonderful introduction. And I know there's a lot more to come. You did give us a very brief introductory explanation of the suit you wear thing, but I suspect after Lennox has put all the meat and all the bones that are there, I suspect you'll come back and declare away a lot more about the suit you wear thing. And but I want to. We seem to have lost Gabriel Christian for a minute. I suspect he's going signing out and signing back in because he was having some little technical difficulties. So we'll come to Gabriel when he comes back. But I really wanted to go now to the opposition leader, Lennox Linton. You notice, Dr. Andre, that we've been bringing him here fairly often, and because the thing he has so much valuable information, so much documentary evidence about all of the things that we're talking about, all the instances. When I mentioned some of those things, for example, you remember I mentioned things like, I'll just go back and tell you, the question of the proliferation of this crisis of governance, the whole question of honorary motions for honorary doctorates in the parliament. I'm not so sure why the speaker didn't allow that and give the doctorate one time. On kidnappings, on unaccounted billions, on human rights abuses. We remember the Salisbury people, remember the number of little peaceful demonstrations where people were tear gassed and bus drivers were put on the ground and it appears that they were kicked. I remember one instance where a woman was said to have been dragged by a leg in front of the police station. I wasn't there, I don't know for sure. But then the unprofessional policing and the abuse of procurement laws and all those unfair things and the waste of resources, I believe that the opposition leader has a wealth of all of this, and that is why we would want to go to him to sort of put some meat on some of the bones that already Dr. Irving Andre gave to us a minute ago as his introductory remarks. So Honorable Opposition Leader, Mr. Lennox Linton, let me yield over to you now. You need to put on your mic, unmute your mic. Okay.
Sheridan, Mr. G, thank you very much. Thank you to Lambi and Sherwin at the studios and my friends on the panel, Gabriel Christian, Irving Andre of the grammar school days. And God bless you, gentlemen.
So incidentally, were you a brownie or a scout or a cadet or what, Lennox?
I was a cub.
But you're a cub. Okay.
Yeah, didn't get past that.
Okay.
But I wanted, Sheridan, before, and by the way, I heard you accusing the erudite Dr. Irving Andre of serving up bones. There were no bones there. Okay.
Okay.
What I heard tonight, there were no bones, just meat.
Uh-huh.
All right. But I wanted to say that as we start, because we're tracking back from where we are, and we're trying to see how we got here to these days of sutiwe, epipani, sipani sutiwe ipani vole. That's what I hear. I don't know what the translation is.
Gabriel, your mic is, you want to mute your mic, Gabriel.
The folks.
Okay. Sorry, Lennox.
The folks who are more adept at the Creole language than myself will translate. Sipani sutiwe Ipani Vole. But I wanted to make the observation that in the national anthem of Dominica, bringing in our nation state in 1978, there's a call to serve. A call to serve. Come ye forward, sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare. Strive for honor, sons and daughters. Do the right, be firm, be fair. Toil with hearts, with hands, with voices. We must prosper. Sound the call in which everyone rejoices, all for each and each for all. That all for each and each for all line in the national anthem is an encapsulation of the wisdom of the ages that come to us from all the great cultures of the world. And summarized, it says, nothing in nature lives for itself. Rivers do not drink their own waters. Clouds do not swallow their own rain. Trees do not eat their own fruits. The sun does not shine for itself. Flowers do not spread their fragrance for themselves. Living for others is a rule of nature. Life is good when you are happy, but it is much better when others are happy because of you. The wisdom that has come down and has been distilled for us through the ages. So from here we get the service above self principle. Service above self to God, to country. From that principle that living for others is a rule of nature. And we come into this time now where we have service to country in the governance of Dominica, for example. And what we have seen over the last 20 years is a situation where people become ministers serving at the highest levels of government in Dominica. But before they became ministers, they were candidates who expected and received hundreds of thousands of dollars for them to contest the election on a Dominican Labour Party ticket. So where you're talking about service to country now, in the governance of Dominica, you have these examples of people expecting, in some cases demanding, and receiving money to serve, to stand to serve. And when you look at that situation, when you look at that state of affairs, you ask yourself, what leadership is that kind of service, that purchased service, setting for public service in Dominica, for professionalism in the public service, professionalism in the police service, professionalism in the organs of governance of the state? And what do you find? You have a number of public officers at very senior level who are yet to understand that they are serving the state of Dominica. They believe that their service is to an individual or a group of individuals. Somebody or someone or some people they perceive can make their lives personally better by doing what is good for that individual as opposed to what is good for the country. So they have moved away from service to God. Après bon Dieu, c'est la terre. They have moved away from service to God and country to service to one of their fellow men or women who can purchase that service and make them personally better off. And so the sacrifice element disappears. Nobody is sacrificing anymore, making any sacrifice to serve in government anymore. Everybody is well paid over and above what they're entitled to for being in the government of the Labour Party of the last 20 years. And so you see, jumping down from that, a compromised situation of professionalism in the public service, in the police service. And The most recent example and glaring example before us is the kidnap of Mehul Choksi, in which the government is complicit, where police officers have totally abandoned their professionalism and their service to country and engaged in a series of lies, deception, in order to shield their masters in the government from the obvious involvement in international criminality. And so we are compromised, because where the organs of state are weaponized against the people of Dominica in different spheres of engagement, the members of the political opposition, for example, you have a whole police force weaponized against them. You have institutions of state weaponized against them, because if you do not hail the king, then you should not eat. Then you should not survive. And you have a parliament of Dominica where at the highest level of representation of people, you're supposed to be serving country. You have people coming in there to do service to others, which is where the honorary motion to confer on Roosevelt Skerritt a third doctorate comes from. Doctor, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt. Take that, Mr. Leader of the Opposition. And a lot of people ask, well, what was behind the tagging the Leader of the Opposition to that statement? It was very simple. Earlier in the proceedings of the Parliament, the Leader of the Opposition, in congratulating the Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt for receiving the Jose Marti Award from Cuba, thought it would be good, since many people don't know about Jose Marti or the work of Jose Marti as a freedom fighter and the father of independence of Cuba, to read into the record of the Parliament some of the lessons of Jose Marti, especially on the standpoint of theft in government and theft of the people's resources. And I think they took that to mean that I was suggesting that the Prime Minister in particular should take note of those lessons, which say, in essence, if you're given resources that you hold in trust for the people, and then you turn around and you use those resources without the permission of the people or against the people, then you are a thief. And if you owe your office to the voters of the country, and then you use that office against the best interests of the voters, then you are a thief. So I read that into the record of the Parliament and hoped and prayed that with this award of the in the name of Jose Marti by the government and people of Cuba to Roosevelt Skerritt, these teachings of Jose Marti would live and breathe with us as we endeavor to create the best Dominica for all Dominicans. And we track forward to the member for the Sufria constituency, the Minister of Tourism, who wanted me to take that meaning the triple doctorate being conferred. But all it was displaying was an anger that somebody was pointing out a truth that was inconvenient for them. They seemed to like Jose Marti, but not the service that Jose Marti, the quality of service that Jose Marti taught should be part and parcel of governance. And the sacrifice that he suggested should be with the public servants of the global community. That willingness and that ability to honestly give stewardship for the people's resources, the people's finances, and to honestly account for your responsibilities that are supposed to be lifting the lives of people everywhere.
But before you go on there, Lennox, let me just ask you about this. I mean, you're in Parliament. You know a lot better than me about the proceedings of Parliament. Is there any such thing as an honorary motion?
No.
Is there any such thing that the Parliament can confer an honorary doctorate on anyone?
Parliament can do basically anything. And there was nothing preventing the member from standing up and move. I don't know what's an honorary motion. I know about a motion. So the member could have moved a motion that the parliament confers on the prime minister a doctorate for whatever. That would be new. That would not have been done before. It would have been without precedent, but the parliament can do that. And by majority vote, it could have been said that, oh, now the prime minister has a third doctorate. I don't know who gives the parliament of Dominica the authority to confer doctorates, but through that process of motions, by majority vote, they could actually make themselves look like fools to the international community, and they could have done it. There's nothing stopping them from doing it. And then the parliament would be known and ridiculed around the world for conferring a doctorate on the leader of government business in the House. Right? But there's no such thing as an honorary motion. I don't know what that is.
Okay. Well, Lennox, I know there's a lot more, and I know that you have, right?
But I just want to say, Sheridan, that you see, in the past, in recent times, I've been quoting the French philosopher Frederick Bastiat a lot, and I'm paraphrasing him here tonight, that when plunder of state resources becomes a way of life for a group of people in society, they find and create for themselves over time a legal system that justifies it, and a moral code that glorifies the plunder of state resources. And on the question of service, in service to humanity, in service to God and country, we don't steal from the public purse. We don't plunder the public purse. But that is what seems to be the hallmark of service in government today. And that's why, at this point, I want to quote Josiah Gilbert Holland. God give us men, a time like this demands. Strong minds, great hearts, true faith, and ready hands. Men whom the lust of office does not kill, men whom the spoils of office cannot buy, men who possess opinions and a will, men who have honor, men who will not lie, men who can stand before a demagogue and damn his treacherous flat trees without winking, tall men, sun-crowned, who live above the fog, in public duty and in private thinking. For while the rabble with their thumb-worn creeds, their large professions, and their little deeds mingle in selfish strife, lo, freedom weeps. Wrong rules the land, and waiting justice sleeps.
Lennox, I appreciate your opening remarks here. And you brought on so much. I mean, the whole question of the national anthem, you've been quoting it for so long. It's so much supposed to guide our way of life. I'm not sure why we just ignore it and do all of the things that we do, all for each and each for all. And you mentioned the question of nature. Nature does not live for itself. So, Gabriel Christian, I wanted to go over to you because this whole question of service, the whole question of servitude, the whole question of, people, this whole business of self-serving interest and so on, it never used to be that way before. I wonder whether the framers of our Constitution ever anticipated that there would come a time when we would find people who were willing to do what is being done now. If they had, would they have put some restrictions in our Constitution that limits the powers of our political directorate? Gabriel, let me just go over to you because you're so used to service. You've served in so many different ways. And so let's go over to you and let's hear you, Gabriel.
A blessed good evening to you, Brother G, and Brother Lambie at Master Control. Blessed good evening to you, Brother Irving. Blessed good evening to you, Brother Lennox, and to our listening audience. Brother G, on my way here home this evening, I had occasion to let you know that I had sent you and Irving some scans I'd done of the notebook, which I hold up here so that listeners can see a weather-beaten book. It is one of the colonial era logbooks that I'm sure people like Lennox and yourself and Irving will be familiar. It was the sort of book that the British government gave heads of departments. And they all, I think, were made out of the printry, out of the same, they were cut from the same mold. And this one was given to my mother, who was then my manager of the Workshop for the Blind, but I took it, I expropriated it, and I used it for the minute journal for the Roseau branch of the Popular Independence Committee, the cadre. And it is starting on the date of the 30th day of Thursday, 30th June, looks like 1970, no, the 20th day of July, 1977. And the reason I mention that is there's some names that I note here in the minutes. Lloyd Pascal, Alvin Bernard, Joseph Tutti Geist, Hilarion Deja, Irving Andre. In one visit from the St. Alphonsus Youth, we have Billy Doctorow, Dagmar Deja, Linton Smiley Burnett. How old were we? We were 15, 16, 17. Some of us maybe 18. Hilarion, whose home we used, was an adult. We were all teenagers. And the reason I mentioned this book this evening is that you can't plant apples and pick oranges. You can't plant dasheen and pick bananas. Children are what they learn. And so for those of us who today or tonight are on this program, Lennox said he was a cub. I know Irving was a leader in the cadre at the independence period. I know you, Mr. G, you and I were cadets. Irving was almost a cadet because Irving was in the hostel looking through the louvers as the cadets went through their maneuvers. And by the principle of osmosis, a higher to a lower concentration, I think he imbibed a lot of the values of the cadet program. This is a very serious time. It's not time about simply bashing government. We know that they are fully deserving of every criticism level because we are fair people. We commend them when they do good and we criticize them, as is all right in a democratic society, when they do wrong. But the point I think I want to make is that service is something that has to be inculcated through civic education in the family structure and in the community from young. When we are in our 60s or 70s or 40s or 50s, that is not the time we're going to have grafted onto our psyche the principle of service. It has to start in the home. We have to have parents, where we have two parents, God bless us, who can teach the importance of volunteerism and serving others. Here in the United States, there's something called AmeriCorps. Formerly, it was the Corporation for National and Community Service, CNCS, a federal agency that sends people, young people, across the country to serve in the times of disaster, to deal with issues of the opioid crisis, which is killing so many young people, to address issues of crime, and to promote education. Youth civic engagement is defined as working to make a difference in the civic life. It also involves developing the combination of knowledge, skills, and values, and motivates young people to make a definitive commitments to the community within which they live. Are we doing that? Do we have a national agency that promotes those values? Therefore, sort of what you call constructs of civic engagement. Number one, civic action. Civic action or participation in activities such as volunteerism or service given one to another to help better the community in which one lives. Number two, civic commitment or civic duty, which is the willingness to make positive contributions to the society within which one lives. Number three, civic skills, or the ability to be involved in civil society, politics, and democracy organizations. I take a moment now to commend Mr. G and all those who are members of the Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation. All of us are volunteers. None of us are paid a salary. All of us on this program have volunteered our time to come on radio to speak to our community with a degree, hopefully, of love, grace, and kindness one towards another. We are saying, fourth and finally, another aspect of the civic engagement construct is social cohesion. Social cohesion, or a sense of reciprocity, trust, and bonding one towards another. You see, so you see how it's all connected. If you have civic education, you have civic engagement. And when you have civic engagement, you have social cohesion. So societies where there's a high threshold for civic education results in societies where there's a high level of civic engagement, which then results in a high level of social cohesion. The society is less riven by discord. Some societies have fallen apart right here in our Caribbean. Haiti has fallen apart, literally. I mean, every day brings some terrible news from Haiti because of a dictatorship that was there for almost 40 years. A father and son dictatorship, baby doc and papa doc. And the Haitians, as a people, have to take a degree of responsibility for having tolerated it so long, just like Dominicans today must take a degree of responsibility for having tolerated almost 20 years. I wouldn't say all of the Labour Party tenure was corrupt, but certainly the last 17 or 18 years has been in your face, barefaced lawlessness. And our people, unfortunately, have sat down there, the majority on the island, unfortunately, and tolerated it. As a result of that, we have a lack of social cohesion, and we have a lack of lawful behavior. You have increasing gangsterism. You have increasing money laundering. You have increasing dope dealing, and you have increasing killing. We posit, Dominicans, our friends, our families at home and abroad, that if we are kind to each other, if we are service-oriented, that is, we do things out of unrequited love. We're not doing it for what we can get. You see, it's not transactional. We're doing it simply because it's the right thing to do. I asked someone this morning at my office, how much money was Jesus Christ paid on Calvary's cross for his sacrifice for us, if we are of the Christian persuasion? And Dominican people, a majority of people, claim to be Christian. We have a lot of churches, we have priests, bishops, and the like. How much was he paid? Well, he sacrificed himself for us. He never got paid any 30 pieces of silver, and all sins were washed by the blood. Today, we know that it's important for us to serve our fellow man and serve the cause of democracy. And so when the senior citizens, that's what they are, because our young people have not chosen to join them, it's because they were seasoned in a society where service was more exalted. And I'm going to make a statement today that a lot of people find controversial. We need to re-examine the colonial period. I posit this evening, and I want you to make sure you record it, Mr. G, that if Roosevelt, Skerritt, and his government were under associated statehood, they would all be in jail. Let me repeat. If Roosevelt, Skerritt, Prime Minister of Dominica, and his current government were a government under associated statehood, they would all be in jail. Why do I say this? Well, I say this because of the following four incontrovertible facts. The government of Dominica is a body corporate. It has a prime minister. It has a cabinet, which under the rules common to cabinets operate as one single entity. That entity has been followed throughout the past 15 years and found wanting on four major planks. One, as a body corporate, that entity knew or should have known of a scheme to fleece the public till, that is the Treasury of Dominica, by engaging in the over-invoiced purchase of bins from a shadow company in Pennsylvania in violation of the Procurement Act, number one. Number two, in at least 24 instances, that organization, a legally constituted entity, under the laws of the Commonwealth of Dominica, led by Roosevelt Scarrett, has been engaged in the provision of diplomatic passports to at least 4 money launderers. I call them banditti, mafiosi, and criminals who've been arrested by law enforcement. Alison Madueke, a Nigerian Minister of Oil. Francesco Carallo, arrested by the Italian police. Enji Lapsang, arrested by the FBI. And number 4, Ali Riza Monfared, arrested by Interpol. Madueke was arrested by Scotland Yard. That entity, as a body politic, as a corporate entity, is charged with the knowledge of what the government that is in power does in its name. Number 3, that same government in recent times gave a contract to a shady Middle Eastern operative called Anthony Hayden for the contract of a $1 billion national airport without putting it through public tender, a violation of Dominica's Procurement Act and Finance Act. And number 4, and finally, monies generated from the sale of Dominican passports, a state asset, have been placed outside the consolidated fund, again in violation of Dominica's Finance Act, which is a creature of our Constitution. And for that, my friends, for that lack of service, for that lawlessness, not talking about Choksey and the kidnapping case that was discontinued by the disgraceful director of public prosecution who has caused herself to be used in this matter, the case of the Noli Prosequi, of the treating and bribery case, which the CCJ said should go ahead, and a letter is issued by Lennox Lawrence, the Prime Minister's lawyer, and the case is thrown. I'm not even talking about those things. When we had differences with government that we had ruling us, but never to that extent of lawless behavior. Neither did we have a civil service where today we have heads of department, permanent secretaries who bend to the will of the Prime Minister, run their administration priorities and prerogatives, and furthermore, in the case of the police service, which has now been used as an instrumentality of the ruling party. All of those things are a debasement of the whole principle of public service. A public servant serves the public good. A public servant does not look for reward in everything that he or she does. A public servant looks to the best interest of the country and the community, not the ruling party. A public servant, in our tradition, exalts democracy and rule of law. Today, we have a police service that does not exalt democracy. We have a police service that persecutes senior citizens for walking around the streets of Roseau, while at the same time, the director of public prosecution discontinues a case where issues of kidnapping would have arisen, and Noli prosecutes a case where issues of bribery and treating would have been at the forefront of the litigation involving that matter. When we talk of service, therefore, I make this call to all Dominicans. Do not wait on a government that has shown itself incapable of understanding the importance of civic virtue and civic duty. Brother Lennox made it very clear. All for each and each for all. That's the call in our national anthem. Do we have that today? No, we do not. We do not have that, and as a result of that, we are poorer for it. So my call to each and every Dominican within earshot of our voices is, if you do not have a young person that you're mentoring this evening, find one. I repeat, if you do not have a young person, a young man, a young woman, who you're mentoring, who you're teaching, who you're guiding, who can call on you for direction, find one. Because it's not enough to criticize the government of Roosevelt Scarrett and his collaborators. We have to look, each of us, within ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we doing? What am I doing as a police officer to exalt the best value system of the police service? What am I doing as a nurse to exalt the best values of the nursing service? What am I doing as a diplomat to exalt the best values of diplomacy? Am I going to the communities in Canada or Washington or other places where I'm posted and speaking to all the Dominicans? Or am I just speaking to a tiny sliver that can take direction from me, can take money from me to pervert an election and to overthrow our democracy by bringing people down to vote in violation of our electoral laws? Am I using my position as a diplomat to not advance my own educational interest or my own personal interest, but to use it as an opportunity to leverage funding for agriculture in St. Joseph and across the country, to leverage funding for industry in St. Joseph and around the country, to bring Dominicans in Washington, D.C., and wherever I may go, in New York City, for instance, together, regardless of freedom, UWP, labor, to work together for the country's best interest. If one is not doing that as a diplomat being a public servant, then you have failed. Not only yourself, but you failed your country. And so, my friends, I want us to understand that even if we remove this government tomorrow, and we still have a value system that tolerates lack of civic engagement, lack of volunteerism, lack of public service, not public or partisan sycophancy, we will continue to degenerate into failed state status. So tonight is a night for us to reflect deeply on what each and every one of us, according to our station in life, can do to make a difference in the affairs of our beloved country by being kinder, by being gentler, by volunteering our time, by volunteering our service to try educate each other and help each other. And in particular, to guide our young to join organizations like the Boy Scouts, like the Cubs that Lennox was a member of, like the youth councils and student councils and organizations as Irving was, like the cadets, like you, Mr. G, once regaled me with stories of marching up to Soufriere and Point Michel, Scott's Head, with a rifle on your back and coming back to do voluntary work. As for me, I've just been your obedient servant. Very thrifty, and Irving, you need to know, the suits that I try to get, I like to follow you. Irving, I would like the listening audience to know, you a World War II veteran, Jewish guy in Toronto. And when I would visit with him, we would fancy the $99 suits, not the 7,000 Savile suits that others fancy. No, my speed was more 150, and if I can get it for $99, I would do much better. Thrift is another part of virtue. Thank you very much.
Well, yes, Lennox and I will stay out of that part of the country.
Yeah. Suit he wear.
Yes, suit he wear.
Gabriel wear.
We leave that alone for now, Lennox. You and I are not in that now.
Yeah, I just wanted to say what I was hearing. I was hearing suit he wear.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But I want to go to a break, and I want to allow Lambi to take some calls. But before I do, Dr. Irving Andre, I just wanted you to comment on this, that you mentioned the Brahmin conduct of some folks. And then, of course, one of the things I've been hearing Matt Pelty talking about recently, every day he seems to come on and he says something about somebody called him from the infirmary. And they're saying, that they have not got paid for 2 months and 3 months. These are people who are working, looking after the elderly, trying to ensure that they're okay. And for all of the things that you mentioned, all these largesse and all these things going on, and yet it is little things like that for the little people who are working in the infirmary, and not getting much at all, yet they have not been paid. I don't know whether that is still the case, but they have not been paid for 2 to 3 months now. That is what Matt said. Let me get your comments on that before we go to a break, Dr. Andre.
All that is integral to what we are talking about. But it's not just those who are seeking financial redress for services to country. There's a young man called Jammers who've been literally begging over radio for months for what is owed to him. There's Vesco Jones that Lennox has talked about, fired for doing his job at the airport. Political victimization in its truest form. And you juxtapose that to the political operative who was found to have signed an agreement given him a $7 million compensation for another hotel to be built. Now imagine with me if you were a civil servant. Imagine with me if you were a civil servant who'd worked 2 decades, 3 decades, who'd done everything right to gain a promotion, to gain what is befitting of his skills and his dedication to service. Imagine how that could shatter morale. That some political operative, someone who is only interested in his own self-interest, someone who is only interested in violating the state funds, who is getting a contract based on taxpayers' dollars for work that is based exclusively on self-interest. How much damage can that do? It destroys morale in your civil service. It undermines the justification for selfless service in the national interest because it treats you as someone who can be discarded with impunity. And this is the cynicism that has crept into the system. Crime does not pay. But if the message you're sending is, guess what, crime does pay. But you know, Mr. G, do you have a smartphone?
I have an old phone there.
Okay, I thought you had a smartphone. Well, can you dial for me? Ask Father Jack, Pastor Jack, or his other two colleagues. Can you ask them if money makes you happy? When you get an answer, tell me. Does money make you happy? Do ill-gotten gains make you happy and contented? Making you live out the rest of your life in red-carpeted luxury? Ask Pastor Rodney about this for me. Because somewhere I read, Mr. G, and I can't remember where, that he who received 30 pieces of silver, he took his own life. And while you're doing your research, Mr. G, ask a Kadash singer called Chubby what happened to the person who reported to the police that he has stolen a coconut. Why are those who are profiting on state funds, why are they so bent in a destructive mood? Why are they preaching violence against those who hold contrary views? Why are they advocating that this person should be taken away? Why are they talking about spiritual drones even while they say 1,000 novenas? Do ill-gotten gains make you a happy person? Because this lust for self-aggrandizement raises a central question. What is success? Is it the accumulation of wealth in an illegal fashion? Wealth that does not belong to you? The accumulation of wealth at the taxpayer's expense? Or is it something more fundamental, something more spiritual? Whatever you do to my brother, that you do unto me. Is success the extent to which you've reached out and you've offered a helping hand to those who need such a hand to accomplish their goal? Is success this incessant, this excessive craving for what doesn't belong to you? Or is success, Mr. G, taking a walk in the valley? Taking the walk in the valley, you take a stroll up the valley around Foncani, saying hello and breathing that wonderful air, admiring the the hibiscus, the whatever you call it, I don't know, daffodils, if there's such a thing, even admiring the zebra and greeting persons on either side of the valley. My brother, I love you. The closer I get to you, the more you make me feel angry. Is that the be all and end all of your craving, of the insatiable appetite to self-aggrandizement? Is that what it is all about? When are you going to smell the roses? Are you an Egyptian? In what size coffin are you going to take all those ill-gotten gains? Or are you insisting on following what a man called Shakespeare said in a play called Hamlet, that your goal in life is to live in an enseamed bed, lying in corruption? Is that the goal, the end all and be all? Mr. G, it looks like I'm educating you tonight, but I welcome the challenge. There's a shop in India, a dollar store, where you can buy PhDs for $9.99. Even if you get 10, is that a measure of your achievement? Mr. G, I don't quite understand it. Is that how you measure your success? Take it, Lennox. That's how we are measuring success. 3, 4, 5 honorary degrees that have nothing within it. It stands for nothing. Or are you going to measure your success by proudly walking around your country, seeing people uplift themselves through honest toil, engaging in a time-honored practice called kudme, developing their little property, sending their children to school, hopefully buying a vehicle, feeling that they are part and parcel of this sacred isle? Isn't that a better measure of success than to be drinking? Gabriel, what is your drink of choice again? Help me. Than to be drinking Hennessy.
Squash, Irving. Squash has nowadays. A little vanilla essence, you know.
So, in essence, Mr. G, there's an old song of the Midnight Groovers, bring back the milk and honey. He wasn't so much focusing on milk and honey. He was so focusing on those values that we treasure and that sustained us.
But you know,
and we should stand tall that we continue to advocate for those values, irrespective of what the Pharisees say.
You know, but Irving, I want to, we'll take a word from Gabriel as well and from Lennox before we go to break, because I know they want to comment on what you've said. But I mean, should we extrapolate from that, Irving, that Edison James was a successful man in the sense that Edison James could walk around any community denomination with no bodyguards. He could walk around and talk to everybody. Rosie Douglas did the same thing. Pierre Charles did the same thing. You know, Frank Barron did the same thing. None of them felt they had to have some security to protect them from their people. So, from the point of view of real success, I think it's good when you're able to walk among your people and feel confident that you have contributed to your people's lives and well-being and their lifestyles and so on, living standards. So much so that you don't expect them to want to attack you or to harm you in any way. That, I think, is success. Success is a state of mind as well, peace of mind. You have that as a great state of mind to be. Gabriel, you want to say something quickly before I go to Lennox?
No, I wanted to say something to our listening audience. As someone who, with Irving, was involved in the independence struggle alongside Rosie Douglas, we must reconsider the colonial enterprise from this perspective. Colonialism was a human enterprise with all the evil and all the good of all human enterprises. What was evil? The racism, the classism, the slavery. We know that. And our people fought that. But what were the valuable things? the botanic gardens and commercial botany, a system of law courts where you could go and have your day in court, that if you're arrested, you had to be charged within the time certain, and that you had a right to counsel, that you had a procurement act, that you had to have tender. So our job at Independence was to retain those facets, those human facets that were noble of the colonial enterprise, and not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Because as I reflect here on the BVI, it is so telling that the Commission of Inquiry that exposed the semi underside, the corrupt activities of the government, came out on the same week that the Premier Fahey was brought to a Gucci bag. And these guys are very interesting. They could have chosen any bag, They could have chosen any bag, but they chose a Gucci bag because they knew his sentimentality and his affinity for the luxurious things in life. And they brought him to the bag and they opened it, and they had all the currency in there, and he rubbed his hands gleefully, and they said, the bag's there for you. I think it's $1 million or 750,000. And as he walked out, he got another kind of bracelet, not the gold one, but the shiny metal one. So in the same time that they were able to put together a 900-page commission of inquiry, we're almost 18 years under Roosevelt's carrot. And all of the misdeeds that have been talked about earlier this evening and we know about, not one effort by this government to submit itself to law and submit itself to a commission of inquiry. Not one. What does that say to you? It's almost like the CEO, when he's approached by his CFO, that is his chief financial officer, say, "Sir, we need an audit, He says, no audit. Why would a CEO of a business who's asked to do an audit, which is essentially what a commission of inquiry is? The commission of inquiry examines the operations of a particular enterprise, particular state, to give recommendations, identify things that are right, and in addition to that, things that are wrong, and to make recommendations for either prosecution or action of a corrective nature. And you refuse to do that? What does that say about you? Well, maybe that explains why you have to walk around the country that you govern with security guards of a kind that never in our history was seen by any of our leaders. So that's what I wanted to say. The importance of commissions of inquiry, such as we saw in the BVI. And frankly, if the Brits have to take back for 12 months direct rule to make sure it's done, I think the majority of the people in BVI would much rather that than to see their country descend into a cesspool of tyranny and lawlessness as some countries have. Thank you.
Clearly. Lennox, I wanted to go back to you for a few minutes and let you add something to that before we go to Lambi. Lambi, you can stand by to know that after Mr. Linton, we will come over to you so we can take a break and run an ad for Nitcliffe. And then you can take some calls from the callers. So Lennox, let me go over to you now.
Thanks, Sheridan. I just wanted to follow up on the point that Gabriel was making about the importance of commissions of inquiry and to underline the reality of our situation in Dominica today. The constitutional rule of law in this country confers the responsibility for setting up commissions of inquiry, for empaneling commissions of inquiry on the president of the country, not on the prime minister, his government, or on the leader of the opposition or the parliamentary opposition, but on the president of the country. And unfortunately, we have an occupant of the presidency in Dominica who functions with a moral code that justifies every single act of criminality and wrongdoing engaged in by the sitting government. And there are Dominicans who understand that from the standpoint that here is a man who, in his service to country as a minister of government, felt that it was just all right to move over from sitting in the government to the presidency's responsibility, or the seat of president, where he's supposed to all of a sudden, after being partisan for all these years, all of a sudden function the next day or the next week or the next month as the independent head of state that is honestly and faithfully serving the best interest of all the people of Dominica. The problem we have is not with our understanding of the principles of governance and the constitutional responsibilities for democracy and so on. The problem we have is a problem of people in positions where they fail and they refuse, in some instances, they blatantly refuse to honor the service standards required for the office that they hold. And in the case of the presidency, the president should be the first person. He shouldn't have to be hearing that people on a radio talk show are asking for a commission of inquiry into this or to that, where billions of dollars of the people's money have gone west or south, as the case might be, or east. The president should intervene. The president should act. These are monies belonging to the people of Dominica, entrusted to those who have pledged to serve the public good without fear, favor, affection, or ill will, and who are just very busily going about their own interest of abusing public office for their private gain, and the president will sit by and do nothing about it. We have, at this time, a government who uses the service that it is supposed to be providing to the people, the service that the people expect from it as a government of people who put their hands up and said, yes, we are willing to serve. They're using that responsibility for service, turning it on its head and involving themselves in kidnapping, abduction and forced disappearance of people, forced transfer from one country to another, torture, and holding people hostage, which are all crimes against humanity. And in the process of that, commandeering public officers in service to the state, commandeering police officers in service to the state, commandeering a DPP's office in service to the state, to collude and to cook up stories, to lie and to cheat in order to protect the sitting government from international scrutiny of its disgraceful criminal behavior. Where is the service? So Gabriel and Irving and Andre make the point about not being able to pick oranges from the apple tree or not being able to dig mangoes from the dashing swamp. Yeah, that's correct. So where are we? Because yes, we got to do a lot for what is to come ahead of us and to prevent us from being in a worse situation down the road. Because as Gabriel has pointed out earlier, even if we get a change of government tomorrow and we don't pay attention to the fundamentals of civic education, and we don't pay attention to the fundamentals of engagement with civil society in the course of governance of the country for the best Dominica for all Dominicans, we're not going to succeed. And so tonight, hopefully, represents a turning point in our thinking. And when we talk about this service that we owe to God, the service that we owe to country, après bon Dieu, c'est la terre. So we serve our God, we serve the earth, and we live for each other, as the national anthem calls us to live for each other, all for each and each for all. That is the service. That is the essential nature of the service that we owe to God and country, living for each and each living for all living for each and each living for all. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. This is the each for all, and then the all for each. We have it, we sing it, we chant it, we love it, we live it in our hearts, but we pretend as though we don't understand what it means we do. If we've allowed ourselves to be overtaken, to be overrun by this criminal enterprise, that devalues service, that does not appreciate it, that does not give a damn about what it means for us. It's all about them perpetuating themselves in power, which has set a horrible example for the service that is capable of building country to the level of us earning a worthwhile place for ourselves in the international trade of goods and services, and providing for people the living standards befitting the people of a nature island, and giving to us the best Dominica for all Dominicans. That's all we want, and that's all we stand for.
So Lennox, as I go to the break, as I go over to Lambi, I just wanted to read out a little thing I got from Gabriel about the whole question of the importance of commissions of inquiries. And what Gabriel said was that a commission of inquiry is a tool. Let me just yes, he said a commission of inquiry is a tool to enable the investigation of matters of public concern in a public forum other than in an ordinary court. Commissions are aimed at encouraging transparency through fact-finding and providing input for future investigation or criminal proceedings if it becomes necessary. So I thought I would just leave that out there with our listeners and our wonderful folks on Facebook. There are many of you there, and I'm happy to have you. We'll acknowledge you, after the break on the other side there. Let's just go over to Lambi now. Lambi, maybe you can take an ad from Nick Cliff and then give the folks the numbers so we can take a few calls. Over to you, Lambi.
Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, Inc., Midcliff, uniting our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean nature islanders and friends of Dominica at home and abroad, coming together to help preserve the integrity of Dominica's democracy, human rights, and civil liberties, ensuring free, fair, and competitive elections on a level playing field within a system that guarantees freedom of expression, belief and association, respect for the inalienable rights of individuals and minorities, respect for the rule of law, for free communications media, and free from psychological, mental, and physical abuse of women, minors, the elderly, and young men. State lands are secretly being sold to political acolytes and shady foreigners. CBI hotels are sprouting up all over Dominica. Persons are becoming rich overnight. Public projects are awarded to foreigners and cronies without public tender, and the public is forced to pay in excess of $65,000 a month to rent and maintain a palace for a prime minister. In spite of this obscene display of wealth, seemingly generated by illegal means, Dominicans still live under tarpaulins and are deprived of a basic stimulus package in a debilitating pandemic. Monies donated by the World Health Organization to alleviate suffering seem to be diverted and squandered. Political allegiance is now a requirement for public assistance, while those who exercise their freedom of speech are victimized and ostracized. Nidcliff, support our radiothon, fundraising events, subscriptions, GoFundMe, and other initiatives to help raise funds to support a legal challenge against the siphoning of public funds from the Consolidated Fund and other initiatives and actions. Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, Inc., Nidcliff, working to help unify and build Dominica and our Afro-Caribbean and Kalinago brothers and sisters at home and abroad. Nidcliff, fighting to save our Nature Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, Inc.
You are listening to the Global View and Q, and we are taking your calls right now. Let me give you those numbers. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Let me give those numbers again. 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. And we are taking your calls now, and there is someone already on the line. Good evening, caller. Thank you for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, honorable gentlemen.
Evening.
Good evening.
The discussion tonight is very, very, very interesting and very important. And I have no doubt that many Dominicans are listening accordingly. But you know, there are many national groups in Dominica, such as the private sector. And I am just, ashamed and surprised that the private sector, who I believe is the biggest contributor to the public's purse, to the treasury as you call it, we do not hear them at all. And those organizations only depend on the little man and the little lady out there to go out and protest and waiting on the leader of the opposition to do something. Where are they? Where are their voices? We heard them years ago. The trade unions, where are they? They remember. I'm sure they remember what they did years ago to the late Honorable Patrick John. And there's one now sitting as the president. Can you imagine that? Encouraging what is happening in Dominica?
Thank you,
So it
caller.
is time that the organizations of state in Dominica, DAIC, DEF, and other organizations, such organizations, come out and speak about it. Come out and speak about the ills that are happening in this country. It is time, and stop depending on a little man and lady out there to speak for them. We need to hear them, and I'm sure they're listening to this program, and I hope that they really put themselves together and make a contribution. As a matter of fact, I'll be very happy to hear one or two of them call tonight and express their concern.
Thank you, caller. We do appreciate you joining us tonight. We'd like to encourage as many people as possible to get in during this call period. And of course, those of you call in, be as brief as you can, thus allowing our hosts to drive home their points. Again, we are taking your calls. The numbers 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. The international number 305-432-9624. And with no one else on the line right now, Mr. G, we pass it back to you. And should someone break in with a call, we'll let you know.
Yes, you can just interrupt us at any time, Lambi. Because we know the telephone system, how it operates, right? So just feel free to make me a sign and I will just come over to you. But I wanted to come back quickly. But as I come back, especially I know Lennox, Linton, you would be happy to hear this. I just got a note from someone saying that TLR Fond jumped 14.46 meters to win gold at the Rabat Diamond League. So this is good news, isn't it? I think we should all be proud of her and big up to her. Extend a lot of love and support for her. And I really wish that our country would give her the fullest support so she can reach the highest heights that she is quite capable of reaching, I'm sure. So as we get back into the discussion, Lennox, I wanted to go back to you to start the ball rolling again, because you know why? Because we're talking about all those things, like, all these good things like service and about self and putting, all for each and each for all. But it appears to me that, as Gabriel has been saying, we used to do that before. You see, because people used to cook a little extra so that if friends drop by and, they're hungry, they could eat something and so on. We used to do the kudme thing. We saw all this. I left Dominica when I was 18 years old and went away and started life. 18 years old, we were young. A lot of our young people, we need to really get them into that kind of thing where they can become young and want to be independent, and so they can strive and, but let me go over to Lambi to take a call before I go over to you, Lennox.
Yes. There's someone on the overseas line. Please go ahead, caller.
Hey, good evening. I'm Lambi and the esteemed panel.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. It's about, I'll say, in my estimation, about 18 to 20 years. Lennox, all of us we have been on the radio preaching the same message of wrongdoings, corruption, and everything. And it's like a broken stick in the ear of the Dominican people. So my question to the panel, in their estimation, how long again you think that it will take for the people to rise and take action to get this rogue government off the backs of the people of Dominica? I know I need some answers, because a lot of us are out there and we want to come back home, but we sort of losing hope and faith, you know. So that's my question to you guys.
Thank you, caller. Appreciate it.
Lambi, if you don't have another call, maybe I can just take a quick bite at this, because in actual fact, really, again, it's a question of know what your country can do for what you can do. We all have to play our part, right? I mean, we all have to find a small way, whatever small way we can to contribute to that. If really what we want to see, look, I've been saying for the longest while on this program, I believe in term limits. I believe in fixed date for elections. I think this government has been there for much too long. It's really time to make a change. You know, I just believe in it. I like the North American system where you have 2 terms and that's it. You're done. I think that will put some limits, because I do not think that our constitution envisaged that you're going to have people who are going to come and look at every little loophole and see how they could put a president here that will do their bidding, how they could put a this that will do their bidding, how they could put a police commissioner that will do their bidding, how they could put MPs that will do their bidding, how they put everybody, IPO and electoral commission. I do not think that the framers of the Constitution envisaged that. And I think if they did that, they would have put some more checks and balances and more restraints in there. Because obviously this is not good for a constitution. It's not good for our development. Here's what is happening to us. It is clear from every report that we have had that there is a lot of poverty in the country, a lot of unemployment in the country. There's a mendicancy in the country. Many communities and villages that were a lot better off are not so well off now. It's also clear that some of our natural assets are under threats, like our rivers and so on. It is very, very clear that it's happening. We need a change of direction. But then again, we spoke about it earlier. I mean, there's people who just really will not step up and do something. It's not, you don't have to dislike a government or a leader to change them, you know. What you have to do is to understand that you are not moving forward. Because, I mean, look, as we said, it's all for each and each for all. If some people are making some major, major strides and you're not, and you can say, well, why not? Somebody raised the question of one person get a commission on some investment in a hotel of $7 million. Somebody else, I've heard Lennox Linton talk about people in another hotel in the north who got commissions of something like, is it $100 and something million commission?
$163 million.
Commission. Why is it that the people who are working at Grotto Home cannot get paid? I mean, come on, guys. I mean, Dominicans, are you listening? Little people who are working very hard to look after the elderly. I understand, you know, they're having difficult getting paid, and some people are getting $100 and something million income. There is something wrong with that. It's time to change it. We need a new direction. You don't have to dislike anybody. You don't have to like Lennox Linton or hate Roosevelt Skerritt or anybody else. You just have to look at the system and is it working for you, for everybody, for your neighbor, for your fellow men and your fellow, is it working for your children? Are you going to just simply say, okay, you know what, I'm going to keep quiet. I'm going to wait for the next 15 years so I might get a house? You know, there was a time when people used to, and people used to build their own homes because they were working and they were independent. They had the cash so they could build their own homes. Why do we feel that we must change that now and go back to a system where we have to wait for somebody to give us a handout of a home? And we have to wait 10, 15 years. In the meantime, we have to shut our mouth. Don't say anything which we consider to be going wrong. Don't criticize if we think there's need for criticism. Don't make any comment and just say, you know, something, I'm going to keep quiet because I might get something in 10 years' time. Lennox, I don't know how you see all of this.
Well, the caller was concerned with the length of time patriots of this blessed land has been advocating away from a system of government that is utterly corrupt and is driving Dominica to hell in a handbasket. And he was asking, well, how much longer before change comes? How much longer before the people see the necessity for change? I don't have that luxury I just what is in me is the willingness and the commitment to continue to get people to know better so they can do better, to continue to advocate for the things that are right and just for us in protection of our freedoms, in the upliftment of our quality of life, in the ensuring that livelihoods are protected and enhanced around the country, and at this point to push for and to secure a revival of the rural economy that served so many people so well for such a long period of time. And right now, a large majority of those people are reduced to sitting back and waiting on the government for handouts of a home that they used to be able to build for themselves before. And even now that they have their home, the question of food on the table is an issue. The question of clothing is an issue. So you have one part of the triad of needs taken care of, which is for some people, which is the shelter part of it. So they have a house, it's owned by the state, they don't own it, they will not give them title. They will hold the ownership over their heads so that they remain politically correct and continue to serve the master in the Labour Party that gave them the house. And they will continue to struggle for food and for clothing and for the ability to be able to pay the bills, the utilities and so on that contribute to a basic standard of living in Dominica. All that is totally and absolutely necessary given the resources of which we have been blessed and given the generous amount of monies from the sale of our citizenship that we have under the control of other people in foreign accounts. That's not service to country. That is service to a few select people who have been able to capture government. And how long does government stay captured? That is the question of the caller a while ago. How long will government remain in captivity by a group of persons for whom the public interest is not what they're about? The service to God and country is not what they are about. They're about themselves. That's why they took the payment to contest the elections. And that's why they continue to be subservient to the man who organized the payment, not to the God that we serve, not to the country of Dominica. So they're asking, they're not interested in what they can do for country. The only question in their mind is what can the country do for them, which is where the sacrifice disappears and self-interest rules. So I don't know the answer to the caller's question. I do not know the answer to the caller's question because it's frankly above my pay grade. All that is there for me in this is to continue to stand for what is right, what is just, what is honest, and what is true, because I was trained in a certain way. My parents raised me not to lie, not to cheat, not to steal. I have carried that with me throughout my life. And in serving the public, I try my best to let my service to the public be defined by those values. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. How many others I can convince to come along with me and to serve their country, whether they are doctors, whether they are nurses, whether they're lawyers, whether they are engineers, in whatever field or station of life they find themselves, what are they going to do with the service that they commit themselves to? Are they going to be honorable about it? Or are they going to sell themselves short for a few pieces of silver and sell out their country and sell out the interests of their fellow men, their fellow brothers and sisters? If we commit, regardless of who is in office, that we have a country to build, and in our stations of life, whether they be in the public service or in the private sector, then we'll be utterly professional. And we'll put our country above ourselves. We will put service an excellent service above ourselves at all times, then we're good to go. It is like service is the doorway through which we enter this practice of seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. It is in service that we find the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And once we serve that faithfully, the promise of the good book is that all else shall be added unto you. Why have we forgotten those things? I do not know. It is probably the lure of filthy lucre, the promise of get rich quick, and so on, which have turned us away from principle, from honor, from integrity. We say we are Christians of good conscience, so we must return to the basics and do that quickly.
Yeah, Lennox, I agree with you 100%. I mean, I have to go.
By the way, Sheridan, you made a big announcement there just now.
Yes.
About Thea Lafont jumping 14.46 meters in an international competition and winning gold there.
That's what I was
Thea
told.
Lafont, of course, is the daughter of Ernestine and Dorian Lafont, patriots of this blessed land. And we congratulate them. We congratulate Thea heartily on her accomplishment. We're happy to see she's going from strength to strength. God bless her efforts always.
Yeah, but isn't that what we should be all about, each for all and all for each? I mean, shouldn't be looking at many Thea Lafonts in whatever field, whether it's enterprise or whatever field, and just keep boosting and pushing and building. And let everybody, I mean, generate wealth and generate a good living standard, a good quality of life. Isn't that what it's all about? That is why I say that before just as I go to Dr. Irving, Andrew, that is why I say it's important for us to understand if this thing is not, the caller asked the question, the only way to do this, we are a democracy, we have a constitution, the way we change a government is in the polls. If we understand that this one government is there too long and it's not working for the rest of us, just a simple example, I said the infirmary earlier, is bring the grotto home. Just a very simple example that you have some people who can build 3-4 houses while they're in public service. You have some people who get these massive commissions of millions of dollars. Some of them might be in the public service. And yet some very poor people who are working very hard to take care of elderly people at the grotto home cannot get paid. How can that be? Something is wrong. We need to fix that. As I keep saying, you cannot have a government in there for so long, because after a while, they're going to forget what they're there for. And you can see the results are showing. Our ladies and gentlemen, Dominicans at home and abroad, it's probably time to try something new. You don't have to hate somebody or dislike them to change them and make them come back another time. It's done in St. Lucia, it's done in Barbados, it's done in many other countries, in Antigua, in St. Kitts, it's being done everywhere. And they're seeing the benefits of doing that. Why can't we do that? Let's open up our eyes, Dr. Andre, as I go to you, let me just acknowledge some of our very fine folks who are with us on Facebook. I can see David Johnson is with us, and Penny Shirley is there. Marceline Edwards is with us. Michael Alexis, Dorian Dorival is there. Judith Cochran is there. Shirley Phillip. Michael Alexis is also there with us. Marina Charles is here. I can see Everlasting Peter and Stephanie John Baptist and Mali Austri. Let's see who else again. Here we have so many people here. Jira Hector is also here. Eric Prince is here. Just want to acknowledge some of you. We may not have time to read some of your messages here. Veronica Paul. Yes. I see again Celia King is here. And Celia King corrected me. I could see that, and she said, no, it is not the infirmary, it's the grotto home. So thank you for that correction, Celia. And Norris Charles is with us. Juanita Prince, Orsi Tibi, Simeon Joseph. Somebody's mic is on, and so could you turn off your mic because we're hearing your conversation there. Shirley Phillip is also with us. So lots of people are with us, and I just wanted to reach out and acknowledge all of you and thank you for being with us. Feel free to call at any time and express your views live. Dr. Andre, I wanted to go over to you because, you've been hearing what we're talking about, and this caller called and asked a very important question: how long will it take? But we know, for example, look, Joe Biden has been in office now for 1 2 months. Look, see everybody now calling for his head. I believe he's done reasonably well. The economy is doing well. The unemployment rate is down to 3.6%. But he had problems with the COVID situation. He had problems with the cost of living. The gas prices have gone up. That's probably the Russian wars caused all kind of things that happen. And so there are things, but the Americans are saying, listen, we need better performance. But yet in Dominica, our gas prices are going up. I mean, we have in all kind of problems. We have health issues that cannot get sorted out. We have accidents, got law taking place. We have all kind of laws that are not being enforced. And so, Dr. Andre, maybe you can help out the caller to see how best we can do something about this.
I think I may have to be guided by no less a figure than Martin Luther King when he said, "How long? Not long." Can I measure that in weeks, in hours, in months or years? I can't. But bear in mind, it will take as long as the people gain the resolve to look deep within and say, we can do better. We can do better when the World Health Organization gives us $30 million to provide COVID relief, and the vast majority of the population get none. But certain selected corporate types received relief by way of the privilege of selling diplomatic passports, by way of selling passports, I'm sorry, not diplomatic passports, and assisting or engaging in the building of hotels, because what Dominica needs is hotels at this juncture of our history. It will not take long if we obtain the resolve to say that our Constitution protects us. It protects us from leadership that seeks to run roughshod over our rights and freedoms. It will take as long as we develop the resolve to say that law enforcement officers should work with us, whether through community service or community policing, or whether through just the basic enforcements of our laws. How long will it take? It will take as long as we develop the resolve to say that we are our brother's keeper. We should be providing opportunities to everyone rather than surreptitiously delivering brown envelopes in the middle of the night while everyone looks away as if it's not happening. It will take as long as we take up this burden. Well, it's not a burden, this chore, as in CHORE, of leadership. A chore which dictates that we cannot simply rely on those who take the streets. We cannot simply rely on those who go to the forefront of the struggle. We cannot simply rely on those who are persecuted and villainized and demonized by the Electoral Directorate. We should take comfort and solace in those persons whose path in life has not been buffeted by privilege. Persons who on a Wednesday, for example, peacefully protest or peacefully walk for their island, peacefully walk for democracy. As I've said in another context, the most they could be accused of doing is on walking on someone's big toe. There is no violation of any laws. It's not a violation of any article or any paragraph on the Constitution, and yet they are hounded as if they are the hounds from the Baskervilles. It will take as long as our people stand up together in the spirit of brotherhood to say that no, our state means something to us. This sceptred isle means something. This overabundance of greenery, this variegated tapestry of greenery, this land which has been washed by rivers, if not 365, but at least by a few hundred. This land which is so filled with fertile soil that anything you plant will grow. this land which has the ability to become the breadbasket of the Caribbean, this land who has produced so many professionals, whether in religion, medicine, and so on. This land who should be given opportunities to its skilled professionals. Why is it that the likes of Dr. Dangleben, the likes of Dr. Pascal, the likes of Dr. Shillingford, the likes of Dr. Sam, why should they be prevented from practicing their skills in our chief medical facility? Who is hurting the most when you prevent them from doing so? The poorest of the poor, because we all know that when government folks get sick, they are flown out, even if all they need is a paracetamol tablet. So bear in mind one thing: bad governance hurts the majority of working people, because others, in the best traditions of Papa Doc and Baby Doc, have cushioned themselves from hardship, and they've done so at the expense of the people. So, in answer to the question, how long? The question is answer is simple: as long as we permit it to continue unabated. This is my answer.
Yes, and Gabriel, I'm sure you can add something to that, but I insist on this, and I've been saying so for quite a while now, that it makes no sense to keep a government in office for 20 years. And far less for a government that says, okay, they want to stay another 20 years. I'm not sure what they want to stay there for again. The fact of the matter is, if it is about service above self, if the idea is to go into public service to make other people's lives better, have we looked at the evaluation of what is happening there in Dominica now? Many people's lives are not better. That is the point. Many people's lives. I mean, when I give the example of persons working in the grotto home who cannot get paid, I mean, how can you tell me in a country like that you don't care about the little people who are looking after the elderly in the grotto home? I'm sure it's not that much money to get in, and you cannot find the money to pay them. When we can find commissions of millions of dollars to pay other people, that cannot be right.
Yeah,
Something.
but let's also observe, because I've been hearing on the radio station as well, that the amount of money that these servants at the grotto home, these people providing the services at the grotto home and the elderly there get is on the order of less than $60,000 a year. Now, that being the case, we have to ask ourselves, what is it about us that allows us to live in this small country where one man can take $70,000+ from the public purse for his living expenses in a residence, official residence of the Prime Minister, while persons providing service to the elderly in a long-established institution we know as the Grotto Home cannot get paid less than $60,000 a year, when the Prime Minister's salary is 64. When the Prime Minister's salary, I'm not going into that, but his living expenses, rental of the official residence, and the utility bills for the official residence are in the region of $74,000 per month. How do we manage that? How do we rationalize it? How do we say that it is okay for that to be happening? How is it okay?
You see, Gabriel, I want you to chime in on this, because you see, how do we get to a point where we get into public service to help other people? That is what we always say. We go into public service, we're going to help people, all right? We're going to make their lives better. We're going to give them a better life, all right? And all of us want to live, very well together, each for all and all for each. All shall eat. And then somehow that mindset sets in, where you can have so much for yourself, and you cannot even bring yourself to think about the little people who are working at the grotto home, who are not getting paid for 3 months. How do we get in that kind of mindset? And then Dominicans are going to sit there and tell me there's nothing wrong with that. Are we going to ignore that as though it's not a big deal? It's nothing. It's nothing.
Sheridan, Sam Raphael and Jungle, they owe the state of Dominica $6.1 million. $6.1 million. How is it okay for the government to be apparently writing off that debt? But people at the Grotto Home providing service to the elderly cannot be paid. What is wrong with us? $6.1 million to a mouthpiece of the Labour Party. $6.1 million from the public purse. This is not Skerritt's money that he's giving away. This is money belonging to the state of Dominica, which he's using his service to Dominica now to provide a write-off for somebody who is doing his bidding in the public, doing his propaganda work for him. $6.1 million. But the state cannot find less than $60,000 to pay the employees of the Grotto Home for the homeless, for the aged. It is a disgrace.
And Gabriel, can't we do better, really? I mean, can't we do better? It's not just the folks working at the Grotto Home. What about our bus drivers who are complaining they cannot make ends meet? The price of gas has just gone sky high. They cannot balance their budgets. What about the farmers who are complaining that they cannot sell their produce? They're not able to make the ends meet. What about the housewives and the household people who are saying, listen, these electricity bills, because of the price of fuel, the electricity bill is getting just too high, we cannot manage it anymore. What about the people who go to the grocery store and they go on the shelves and they try to put some things in? Every time they look at another item that they need badly, they have to put it back because it's just the budget now low, the cost of living has gone up so high now that they just simply cannot afford to live the same lifestyle they used to have a year ago, 2 years ago, or 3 years ago. What about all of those people? What about the teachers? The teachers, what about the nurses? Right? What about the firefighters and the good police officers? All these good public servants who are there working and toiling. What about them? Why is it that there's a few people can have all these millions and the ordinary people who are working to make life better? I mean, I'm thinking about this epidemic and think about these nurses and the frontline workers, all of them working to keep us safe, and they were having problems getting difficulties with transportation allowances, for God's sake. What is it that we cannot understand that we need to do something to change all of that? The caller is right. How long are we going to stay and watch it happen? As I said, if you change a government, does not mean you hate them. Does not mean you love somebody else more than somebody else. It just means that you want to see some improvements in the lives of your people. And if this regime is not moving the ball forward, you have to try something else. If it seems out of the country, your turn, Gabriel.
Yeah, let me just say that 90% of what we do in Dominica is not known. I'll repeat it again. Because of the dictatorship we've become, we've bred a very ugly country in human relations, too much crime, but we've not given up. But we cannot say what it is we're doing because that's the country we've become, you see. And if our names are associated with certain things at the schools, in the hospital, in the prisons, for instance, it will be blocked. But we do it anyway. We do it because we're not doing it for fame, for a medallion, a medal, for votes. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. We have a non-profit called Rebuild Dominica, and we work in Dominica. But they will never tell you that on DBS radio. They will never send a letter of acknowledgement, even when they know it comes from Rebuild Dominica, of which we're part. That's okay. We do it anyway. And so the caller who called a while ago, my brother, I want to ask you, join with us. We're online. It's a non-partisan organization. We're not part of the UWP, the Freedom Party, APP, or no P at all. Certainly not the Labour Party, if there exists one. And that's what we do. We work with young people We help the hospital system. We help other sectors that I will not mention, but they know, because they call. And we do it out of love of country. You asked me a question, but I want to respond to the gentleman directly. So if you're not part of an organization, join one. Because as individuals, we are incapable of making progress. It's only with social solidarity and a commitment to organization that we can move the agenda forward. It can be Irving Andrew alone, the distinguished judge. It can be Lennox Linton on his own. It can be Gabriel Christian. As individuals, we can do little. As a collective, committed, as Irving talked about, Kudme, as he wisely mentioned, Kudme, as a collective, we can do much, you see. And so, the Dominicans overseas, don't allow yourselves to be divided. We organizations in the 1980s and 90s, we never had any partisanship. We never had any political agenda. We never told people to go home and vote. We welcomed all people who came to Washington, and we welcomed them as Dominicans, and we worked for Dominica. So first of all of you, all of us, let's show some commitment. And when I say commitment, not to an idol, a graven image, a group in power. No, let's be committed to community. Let's be committed to solidarity. Let's be committed to Kudme. Let's be committed to country. And what is required is one single word: duty. Let's all be seized by a solemn oath rooted in duty. Lennox Linton was the host of a program called What About? I came over in 98 and I was honored to be on his program. And he asked me about what I saw. And I said to him, if we ever needed the Cadet Corps, we needed it now. The Cadet Corps had gone into dormancy, you see. Francis Richards, God bless him, heard the program and called in. And he reminded me and the audience of our time as cadets. And the next morning, he found his way to my home in Didier Lane and brought a folder with a plan to revive the Cadet Corps. That happened 2 years later when Rosie Douglas wrote a letter. Well, actually, Rosie asked me to write a letter. I said I'd write it when I got back to my office in Maryland. He said, no. Write it now. What if the plane crashes? You never make it. Write it now. And I sat down in his office and wrote a letter. And the Cadet Corps was reborn. And so all of us have the ability in our own little way, as Lennox said, each of us according to our station. You don't have to be a leader of the Freedom Party or leader of the UWP or a minister or someone with a title to help the Girl Guides movement. You don't have to be a minister or a senior counsel to go to the St. Mary's Academy or the grammar school or the convent and to do a law day or do a mentorship. You don't have to be an ambassador at the United Nations or a friend of Zampoli or the folks who got their money in advance at Kempinski Hotel. How much was it again? $120 million they walked away with before the hotel made a black cent to go to
$163 million.
Indeed.
81.5 million for each of two individuals.
Shame. That's how we do business in Dominica. These are public funds. This is passport money. Last time I checked, the passport is a state asset. It's a badge of citizenship. So one thing we can do for those of us who are involved in that racket is to stop being part of it, you see. Because the people who were with Baby Doc and Baba Doc, they were living well. I remember an article in Time magazine, Michelle Duvalier, she would have the air conditioning, which was being produced by diesel, which the average Haitian could not afford, to cool the Palais National to 50 and 60 degrees, Brother G. You know why? She could wear her mink and her fur coats in a tropical country. That's the kind of misconduct, the kind of greed that elite in Haiti looted that country for. What's going on in Dominica? We hear that while people are still on the tarpaulins, we have a leadership that is on its second or third palace, you see. $64,000 a month, you see. That's not salary. That's simply an additional emolument, you see. And we have people who are supposedly educated. So I ask all of us to understand commitment to country over self, commitment to duty. We have to be dutiful, right? And duty requires oftentimes sacrifice, like being on this program after a long day, to try to share with our people our knowledge, to share with our people our love, to share with our people our understanding. We're not here shouting at our people or trying to misguide them into gang membership or misguide them into worshiping a graven image or an idol with feet of clay, or to have them condone corruption in public office. No, we're trying our best to minister unto them and to say to us, each of us, we have a rendezvous with destiny. So if you do not have a young person in the Cub Scout movement or in the cadet movement or in some youth council or student council that has yet to be formed, form it with them, guide them, educate them. You know, the first thing Rosie gave me, I always remember, was a book called Common Sense by Thomas Paine. He didn't take us out of school. We had to write essays. We had to attend meetings. I just showed you the minutes book I have here after how many years? 46 years. I have it in my hand. Teaching us how to give a vote of thanks. I have a friend who's very important in Dominican history, who is no longer in government, who said to me, there's a meeting at Laplin the other day, and he asked a young girl to give a vote of thanks. And she said, what is that? She said, I'm not voting for any party. I'm too young. She didn't understand what a vote of thanks meant because she had never been involved in Robert's Rules of Order, how to have a meeting, how to pass a motion. These were the things we were schooled in. And so we have to be committed to educate our people. We have to be dutiful to our country. And finally, we have to put country over self, you see. We have not to abide by cowardice. We have to be willing to be strong and to stand up and to speak truth to power and put the best interest of our country ahead of ourselves. And so I want to give a shout out to our teachers who taught us well, those who were in the guide movement, like Miss Garaway, now Pestina. I remember her as a guide leader. I remember a guy by the name of Rawl from St. Alphonsus Youth Troop. He was a legendary scout leader. Where are those leaders now? Who shall replace them? Well, each and every one of us have an opportunity to follow in the footsteps of those great public servants, many of whom were not paid. I don't think Miss Gary was paid for being a scout, a guide leader, I'm sorry. I don't think the gentleman Rawl was paid for being a scout leader. All of those things were voluntary. But they brought great benefit to our country. They made our country to be a better place. It meant for us to have greater social solidarity. So let's think about the parish fair and what that represented. And let's think about commitment to community, duty to country, and country over self. CDC used to mean Community or Colonial Development Corporation. I call it Community, Duty, Country, CDC. If we can follow those three principles or three passions and be passionate about those things, we shall have a better Dominica. Of that, I'm confident.
Yes, and Dr. Andre, I am confident too that if Dominicans were to really just take stock of their situation and look to see what could have been, what was with the generations before, what could have been instead of where it is now. I mean, as I said, there's a whole range of people in all different sectors, all walks of life in Dominica. They're under serious difficulty. But I mean, for some reason, people are afraid to come out and express. The fact of the matter, you're living in a democracy, there's absolutely nothing wrong with changing your government from time to time. As a matter of fact, it's a very desirable thing to do in any democracy. It makes your democracy stronger. And it makes your government pay more attention to your needs. You cannot have people, the political directorate in there and looking after themselves, and you can see it, and then you struggling out there. You don't have to hate them. No, all you have to do is say, you know something, we need to make a change now and then to keep our politicians on their toes, right? What we need to do is to make them know that, look, you're not there forever. You better do what you can and do as much for us as you can for the country. Otherwise, we'll take you out and give somebody else a chance. And they have to know that you're only going to keep them for a while. So if you want to bring them back, they have to show some kind of a performance, some kind of track record of having performed. I mean, you remember many years ago, we were told performance does not matter. Why? Because you know that you were not going to be able to perform. Is that why we're here at the juncture that we're at now? Because you did not think performance matters? But I mean, it cannot be enough just to wait every 5 years to get a little handout, every couple of years to get a little handout of brown paper bags, or maybe a couple, 2, 3, 4, 500 people get a unit. And then the other 20,000, when are they going to get a unit? 10, 15, 20 years from now? Is that what you're going to do? By that time, you'll be how many years older? Your children will not have gone as far as they could go because you were not allowed to develop your own economic situation so you could help your children, as was done by our farmers in the past. I think it's important, Dr. Andre, for all people to understand it is better to be independent and self-sufficient so that you can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. And you have to demand that your political directorate create the enabling environment that you are allowed to develop yourself so that you can help yourself rather than to have to depend on them. Dr. Andrew, let me get your thoughts on some of those.
Mr. G, you're absolutely correct. The whole purpose of government is to create the enabling environment to ensure that its people, the mass of its people, prosper. That in one sentence is the function of the government. It is not the case that government is obliged to provide jobs to all its citizens. But once it creates that environment, there are business persons who can establish businesses and create employment. In this dispensation, this is not what's happening. In fact, it's amazing because nowhere else in the Eastern Caribbean or in the Caribbean itself would this happen. That in the midst of an existential crisis occasioned first by a hurricane, occasioned second by the COVID-19 pandemic, we have foreign workers, get this please, displacing local workers. We have the public workers being locked and placed in prison, literally. Those Dominicans who worked there were basically let loose to fend for themselves. We have contractors, we have truck owners, we have masons, we have carpenters who cannot seek or cannot find employment, despite the hundreds of millions of dollars we are spending building apartments, for God's sakes, building all kinds of edifices. So we are being told, in effect, you are not worthy to participate in your own island's development. Trinidadians, St. Lucians, Chinese, these are the persons who are more worthy to obtain employment in your own country. Nowhere else, not in Jamaica, not in Trinidad and Tobago, not in Barbados, not in Antigua, would that ever happen. And so Dominicans have to deal with this situation by looking at themselves in the mirror and asking themselves, why is that the case? As someone told me the other day, am I not a person? Don't I have a dignity also? Am I not capable of performing some of those work, that type of work, which other nationalities seem to be doing within Dominica? Why am I cursed in this fashion? Somewhere fair, Usa happened. My pathway is faltering, but you get the point, Mr. G.
Well, I didn't get it. My pathway is good, and I noticed you biting your tongue there, so you have to try to explain yourself.
I thought you were a little kinder, Mr. G, but that's okay. Play mal, please share, you understand that one. What have we done to deserve this? Nupa Muntu?
Yeah.
Don't we have children to feed? Children to send to school?
Yeah.
Houses to be built? Don't we have ambitions? Should we not be able to guarantee our security? Don't we deserve better? You see what the Jamaicans just did? When a foreign hotel told them, Garçon, don't come to our beach. I'm not advocating any violence, because in my view, violence begets violence. But I'm saying there must be something that you as a nation, or we as a nation, we stand for. The rule of law. The right of every Dominican to be able to earn a living wage, not a minimum wage, a living wage in Dominica. The right for them to be able to send their children to school. The right for they to dream of their children becoming professionals and going abroad and bringing honor to the name Dominica. What's wrong with these goals, Mr. G? Are they too lofty? And I'm not talking about lofty Durant. Are they not worth pursuing? Aren't these cherished values that we should all embrace with open arms? Should we just jettison them and create a society where everyone, or virtually, or too many, are reduced to beggary? Can't we not aspire much higher? So that is basically where we're at. What are we as citizens of Dominica, what are we deserving of? Because other islands are deserving of these ideals, these goals, these gold standards. Should we be just accepting of something much lower in terms of expectations? Should we not have, to use a Dixon phrase, great expectations? Should we not aim for the highest of levels? And Gabriel makes a good point about colonialism. There's no colonial bogey to blame right now. Only the man in the mirror and the directorate. If we don't love ourselves, then who will we love? Thank you, Mr. G.
Yes, and as I go over to you, Lennox, I think maybe it's just about time for us to make our closing comments, but I wanted to put this on the table, Lennox. I want to just address myself back to the caller's question, because the caller asked how long. I mean, the real question is, how long are Dominicans, we as Dominicans, prepared to be able to live that way in that kind of economic condition? To live that way where so many people are not able to pay their light bills comfortably. So many people are not able to go to the supermarket and buy some groceries comfortably. So many people cannot pay their drum leg bills comfortably. So many people cannot pay the bus fare properly. You know, even little people at the grotto home cannot get paid. How long are Dominicans prepared to live with that? Is that the kind of living standard that they really want? You know? I think Irving's mic is on. You might want to turn off your mic, Irving, or something. Somebody's mic was on. So here's what I'm saying is this, that, you know, Dominicans have to make up their minds. I mean, we can do better. We really should not allow ourselves to live. The St. Lucians are not living like. I listened to a news item today. St. Lucian fishermen are saying, listen, we need a major help there because, you know, the cost of gasoline, the cost of fuel is too high. And I'm pretty sure next week we're going to hear that the government of St. Lucia helping them out with that. Because they've done it before. They've given them stimulus packages. It happened in St. Kitts. It happened in Antigua. It happened everywhere. So the question is, why is it that we feel that we cannot do better when we know that the assistance that's available to all these other countries is also available to Dominica? That is a question I think we as Dominicans is supposed to address our minds to, Lennox. I think, how long should we Should we accept that our economic condition, our living condition is going to remain like that just because what? We like a government or we like somebody? It cannot be that you like somebody so much that you're prepared to live in that kind of lifestyle, that condition, that living standard for so long. It doesn't make sense for you to like somebody so much that you subject yourself to that. It seems to me, yes, you can like somebody and tell him, listen, you know something, right now, things are not looking good. Take a little break, come back, wheel and come back again a little bit later. But right now, let's make a little change. Let's see if we can get something better, make a little bit better movement because things are not working out for us. You don't have to,
Well,
you understand what I'm saying, Lennox?
yeah. Put another way, and to the answer to the question, how long? It's going to be as long as people in Dominica continue to participate in and support their own oppression. How can you stand up for and support someone who is supervising your descendants into poverty and joblessness and hopelessness? How do you support that? How do they get you to support that? How do they get you to live a life that is essentially against the best interest of that life? How does it happen? And for as long as those of us who advocate are unable to convince those brothers and sisters of ours that you cannot be participating in your demise like that. You cannot be an active participant supporting people who are oppressing you, supporting people who are making you poorer, supporting people whose service is defective, whose service to God and country is completely corrupted. A friend of Irving Andre, a friend of Gabriel Christian, just sent me a message. It's a very simple message. It says, service to country is the highest form of prayer to the Almighty. Service to country is the highest form of prayer to the Almighty. And when you think of where we have gotten ourselves, that for some people in office, in positions of influence, service to country means denying others of the privilege of serving their country with high professional standards. And I cite the case tonight of Dr. Dale Dangoben on one hand, Dr. Irving Pascal on the other hand. How could it be your mission in public service at the highest levels of government to ensure that these gentlemen do not serve their country? How can that be your mission? How can you stand in the way of that? How on the other hand, in the same vein, can you supervise the exclusion of Dominicans from serving their country in professional fields of engagement, areas in which they're competent, in the construction of buildings and institutions for the country, in the movement of earth, in the clearing of places after hurricanes and so on? They are capable of doing all that. They have demonstrated that capacity through the years. And you pass all of that work to foreigners while Dominicans are sitting aside and looking. How are you serving your country? By denying your fellow men the opportunity or the privilege of serving as well. How can that be your mission? And so we have a huge task in front of us, a huge task of change. It's not easy. Moving the government out of there or voting out the government might be the simple part of it. And having done that, the work then begins, because at the moment it is this government and its corrupted service to country that is standing in the way, that is the go wash Ashimea, preventing us from going forward, preventing us from reviving the rural economy on which so many livelihoods depended and can continue to can thrive going forward. We have destroyed that. We show no urgency in the levels of service to country that will rebuild that and give our people some new hope and some new life, and get them out of this never-ending cycle of struggling to survive, which is not what our national anthem speaks of. Our national anthem speaks of everyone prospering, not merely surviving. Prospering by leveraging the assets that we have, the healthy land so like all fountains, the gifts so rich and rare, the isle of beauty, the isle of splendor, the isle to all so sweet and fair. That is who we are. And in leveraging those blessings that the Almighty has provided for us, we can be a successful small island economy that has properly earned itself a place, a worthwhile place, profitable place, prosperous place in the international trade of goods and services for the benefit of all Dominicans. It is doable. It is waiting to be done. But it's not going to be done by those who don't understand service, those who have compromised service to mean an absence of sacrifice, where in order to stand for country, you must be paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to candidate for the Dominican Labour Party. And when you receive the hundreds of thousands of dollars, to understand that your allegiance is not to God and country, your allegiance is to Skerrit. Your allegiance is to the head of the Labour Party, so that you can call for all sorts of ridiculous things in his name, so that you can love Jose Marti and you can love the Jose Marti Award, but not love Jose Marti, the freedom fighter, and his teachings about governance. And you can seek to ridicule people in the Parliament of Dominica for quoting the national anthem. You can do all those things because it's not country you're concerned about. It is yourself. And we owe a duty to ourselves in Dominica to set the business of service to country and service to God and country right in our country, for the benefit of our country. And to move aside those people who don't understand. If they're called to order and they don't get it, then they should be moved aside. Because that is the difficulty that we're confronting. This corrupted service to country in a country that is supposed to be a country of Christians of good conscience that believe in the principles and the philosophies of Matthew chapter 25.
Okay.
Sheridan?
Yes, Lennox.
Miles to go before we sleep.
Yes.
But the woods are lovely, the woods are dark and deep. But there are miles to go before we sleep, and miles to go before we sleep. Robert Frost. Thank you, Sheridan. Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Irving.
Yes.
Thank you, Lambi, Sherwin, people of Dominica. God bless you. I love you all the time.
And I just wanted, as I go to Gabriel for his closing remarks, that Gabriel, really and truly, I mean, how long are we going to subject ourselves to this? I mean, we're not saying that. Listen, the Freedom Party, you and I remember, the Labour Party was in office. Okay, so the Freedom Party came into office. It was not the end of the world. They stayed there a while. They did what they could. The UWP came into office. They stayed there a while. They left. It's not the end of the world. Labour Party is back in office. If the Labour Party is not there, it's not going to be the end of the world. So what is it that we're afraid of? Many of us who support the Labour Party, many of us did support the Labour Party. All of us in here support the Labour Party at one time or the other. But the point is, what is wrong with just making a change? Nothing wrong. Are we going to say, well, look, we will never make a change, we must keep the same government in there forever and ever and ever? That does not make sense. I mean, which country does that if you're in a democracy? There's no country that I know of that does that in a democracy. Maybe one somewhere. But the point is, we need to make up our minds that we have to be real. Something is not working, is we have to fix it. And obviously, when we look at the lives and the lifestyle, living standards of many of our Dominicans, they all have to admit that it's not working for them. I mean, when I heard somebody say that if there's a change of what, 50 cents in the bus fare, she'll not be able to take the bus anymore. That tells you something about the condition of the budget. 50 cents extra and you cannot pay that. It means that things are rough. That has to be fixed. People really should not be living like that. Okay? And I like to go back to the basics, right? Because a lot of people are not concerned about mansions and luxury. They just want to be able to meet the basic needs in life, right? For food, shelter, clothing. And so if we focus on that, Dominicans, and say, listen, from time to time, we have to change something to improve our lives. It's obviously not happening now. It has not happened for the last 15 years. So is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Try something new. And that's what I'm simply saying. And the reason I say that is because I believe in fixed term limits. I believe in that. I think it works, frankly. It works, term limits. And you see this thing called fixed date for elections, I believe in that too. This nonsense about having an election date in your back pocket, that sounds so childish. I mean, where on earth is that in 21st century? We need to get away from those things. Fix the term limits, and so Dominicans go, all right, we don't have term limits now, but let us think about it. It's time for us to do something to make a change, to try something else. This government, Labour Party can come back again. There's nothing wrong with Labour Party, you know. It's just that it's not working now for the people. The economy is not working. People's economic situation is not working. The social situation is deteriorating. You can see the crime is escalating. You can see the laws are not being enforced. People are complaining about noise. They're complaining about accidents, complaining about investigations are not taking place, reports being made. Obviously, some things are breaking down. We want to fix those things. We don't want these things to continue happening in the country. I mean, it's important for us to consider those things and say, listen, we need to make some changes there, and we'll come back again. Gabriel, your final words?
Let me just say in defense of my parents who voted for the Labour Party, in defense of the founders of the Labour Party, there's no Labour Party, Sheridan, Gregoire. You've not heard any panel discussion on social democracy. Do Dominican students know who Phyllis Randolph was? Apart from the East Low Blood Bridge, do they know what the Dominican Trade Union stood for and that the Labour Party came from the Dominican Trade Union movement? Do you hear any debates in Dominica about private sector versus public sector versus social welfare? Do we even have a Department of Social Welfare? So we don't have a Dominican Labour Party government. We have a racket. We have lawlessness. And let's just be frank about it. It's not because I say so. Ask any Labour Party member, what is social democracy? Who was Phyllis Randolph? What did she stand for? What is her history? Do they even have a website? We have a government that's been in office for 20 years. I challenge any listener to go online and try to find a Dominican Labour Party website that gives a history of its founding, who its founding fathers were, what are its core principles, what are its values, what is its constitution. Do members have a constitution that they even know what the terms are as to what its philosophy is? That is what constitutes a party. A party is something where you have a congregation or a collection of people believing in a particular philosophy and dedicated to that philosophy being triumphant in the execution of public policy. Do we have that today? No. What you have today is one man in the midst of a disaster or shortly thereafter aggregating onto himself $64,000 over and above his salary and living at a level of consumption way above that of the average civil servant, far less the average rural resident in our island. That's what we have. And so what I want to say this evening is we need to be at this time engaged in a deep amount of self-reflection. I want to say something about Lennox Linton. In the 1970s, there arose in Dominica something called transcendental meditation. Lennox Linton, if I remember, was one of the purveyors or one of the practitioners of meditation. I sometimes reflect when I understand the vicissitudes he's had to suffer and for standing up for Dominica. Would he have been able to sustain himself had he not been a practitioner of transcendental meditation? Listen to me carefully, Dominicans. I want you to pay close attention to what I'm saying. Because for those of you who think that removing the racket in office will bring us to the promised land, I say no. Because it will just be another burden on the new government. Because soon thereafter, if we do not change our value system, the lines will begin to form again at the bottom of the financial center. And when Lennox or whoever it is the prime minister, cannot give people what they have been made accustomed to, they will begin to howl for his or her head. Is this what we want? While we've been in this conference this evening, because we don't have a reflective and mediative culture, one that really concerns itself with self-reflection and self-responsibility, I got a most vicious photograph of a young student. I don't know where she was stabbed, but she was stabbed in the face. It was sent to me by one of my grammar school students this evening. While we're here, because students in Dominica now are taking knives to school and are stabbing each other. Next thing they will do, like they see on television, monkey see, monkey do. They'll bring guns to school. Is this what we want? When we speak about lawlessness at the top, it's because our concern is, as in every family, every community, where those who are in office, those who are in power, those who are supposed to be setting the tone, right? Those who are supposed to be exemplary, those who are supposed to be the role models, what are they modeling in their conduct or in their misconduct? Well, if they're modeling love and generosity of spirit and voluntarism and kudme, as my learned friend Irving said, if they're engaged in commitment to country, all for each and each for all, as Brother Lennox said, don't you think we would see a percolation, a sipping into the fabric of the society, that kind of ethic? If we had a more meditative and mediative culture where people reflect on their own inadequacies and look, as Michael Jackson said in the famous song, Man in the Mirror. Lambi, you must play that song if you can find it. Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. Let's look at ourselves. So Gandhi supposedly said, let us be the change that we want to see. That means let us within ourselves begin to model in our conduct. And Brother G, I want to just commend you. You always open up these education sessions, as I call them, by referencing no malice, no hate, only love and understanding and education. Let us not simply judge the government. We've done that with all the ills that they have done. What about us? Each and every Dominican now in reach of our voice must ask ourselves, what am I doing? It was Lennox or Irving who said, it was in paraphrase of Kennedy, ask not what my country can do for me, but what I can do for my country. And that was the sort of philosophical impetus for the Peace Corps to send young Americans all over the world to help others in developing countries. So let's not stop only at the place of judging others. In fact, let's do less of that. Let's judge ourselves. Lennox is not doing enough. What is the UWP doing? Taking away from each of ourselves the responsibility of taking action. That's number one. So let's stop just judging others. Let's judge ourselves. Number two, let's replace complaining about others with a reflection on ourselves and what it is we are doing and what it is we are not doing. Are we volunteering? Are we mentoring a young person? Are we joining the Walkers for Freedom? Can't criticize the Walkers for Freedom. It was Mike Douglas who told me, don't criticize an Indian until you've walked a mile in his moccasins. Number three, by reflecting on that which we want to see changed in society, changing it from within. It stirs us into taking action within the only thing in the world over which we have any sort of control, and that is ourselves. The only thing in the world over which we have any kind of control, and that is ourselves. So Bob Marley said to us in his famous song, I think it was Redemption Song, liberate yourself from mental slavery. Only yourselves can free your mind. So Dominicans, dearly beloved, tonight let us free our minds of the sloth rather, the violence, the giving a pass with a wink and a nod to the ill-gotten gain and to the corruption in office, the failure to support our community organizations, the service organizations like the Red Cross, the Cadets, the Boy Scouts, the Guides, the Cubs, the Brownies, for Christ's sake. Let us be then mentors. Let us serve the best ideals. In so doing, we will birth a new and better Dominica, and students will not be going to school armed with weapons to slash at each other and to savagely attack each other. Instead, they will be focused on debates and panel discussions and community work, and so build the social solidarity and camaraderie and love and understanding that can make for a more attractive society. Because right now, our society is covered in dross and darkness. A great evil has befallen us. And my friends, dearly beloved, we need to reflect, we need to meditate, we need to engage in that kind of spiritual renewal. Because this is not a political walk. This is not a political fight. This is a fight for the very essence of our country. It's a fight for the very spirit of our nation. And whether good will triumph over evil, that decision, my friends, is in our very hands. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thanks a lot for that, Gabriel. Dr. Irving, Andre, you have the final word. I mean, we started off by talking about all the different questions that we had raised. And we asked the question, why is man so unjust to man? You know, and we saw what happened in the grotto home versus what is happening, the largest happening elsewhere. We did mention all the unaccounted billions. We talk about the human rights abuses, the jailing of the opposition, cheating at elections, drug dealings and money laundering that we've been hearing about, unprofessional policing, abuse of procurement laws and unfair distribution and the waste of state resources. All of those things we looked at, and we asked the question, the caller asked the questions quite right. How long? How long are we going to tolerate all of that? How long are we going to allow all of that to keep on festering and proliferating while our own personal situations are deteriorating? And to me, it's an excellent question. So the question is, how long are we going to decide to do that? And I don't, as we said, we don't do those things. You don't change a government because of malice, you know, and so on. No, that's not why you do that. You make a change because you think a change might help to create a better and more enabling policy environment that will allow you to make further progress. Because by and large, Dominicans are not really, they don't really want handouts, you know. But it's just that if they found themselves in a position where they feel that they have to, they can't do otherwise. But it's not always been that way. Dominicans really would rather be able to be independent, to be able to be self-sustaining. I mean, we know so many people are doing little things and helping themselves and making a living. We have so many little boutiques coming up all over the place. I think Dominicans would like to do those things again, but we've allowed foreigners to come and take over and wipe them out of the retail sector. I think Dominicans would like to have an opportunity to go back and be able to help themselves and to develop and take care of their family, help the children get an education. We don't have an over-reliance on the state. Dr. Andre, I certainly believe that Dominicans can give themselves a chance and say, oh, the caller asked, well, how long? And say, well, look, why not try something, you know, around the corner? Try something, make a change, and let's see how it works. Dr. Andre, your thoughts? You might have to unmute your mic. We're not hearing you. You need to unmute your mic, Dr. Andre. Are you hearing us? Because your mic is muted. All right, I don't think Dr. Andre is hearing us. I think his mic is muted for some reason. Not only.
Okay, a miracle has now taken place, and the
Oh,
mic is now alive and well.
I
So
guess
thank the
I guess one of your grandchildren helped you out.
well, Mr. J. You must learn to keep a secret. I know you're a journalist, but you have to learn to keep a secret.
All right, all right. I'll
Let
protect
me
myself.
thank both Gabu and Lennox for their sterling contributions to this discussion. Let me thank Mr. G for hosting it. Let me thank Lambi for facilitating it. And let me thank Showin for making it happen. And let me also thank your listeners who have sacrificed much to listen to the rantings of a few citizens who've long passed their prime. But I adopt all the views expressed by both by the participants this evening. I believe we're in sort of a crisis, really. I think we're at a juncture where we have to ask ourselves, from whom do we sustain the faith and the hope and the strength to make the kind of changes that we need in our Dominica? But all is not lost. Sometimes in the darkest moments, the seeds of rebirth and redemption have been sown. And I certainly take courage and I take example from the work being done by Dominicans on the ground and Dominicans in the diaspora. Dominicans in the diaspora who express their views, who not only express their views about the integrity or the significance of democracy, but who assist financially in myriad causes, causes designed to bring relief to Dominica. Let me thank those who call the radio stations. I'm inclined to start naming a few, but I will obviously miss a few. Let me thank those pastors whose name I don't need to call, and even those priests who have expressed views which are consistent with the preservation of democracy. Let me thank those who have the audacity to engage in peaceful assembly in the streets of Roseau, who have caused no harm, who have not been a subject of a complaint regarding the trespassing on property, the impeding of traffic, shouting aspersions at anyone, who have not committed any of these things, but yet many of whom who've been brought into the court system, while we have the inexcusable phenomenon of unsolved murders. So we have the resources to produce dozens of police officers when helpless persons are brought before the court, but we don't have those resources to conduct any forensic investigation, any type of fingerprint investigation, any type of blood splatter analysis to solve serious murders in Dominica. You draw your conclusions about that sorry state of affairs. So I take courage in those who are pushing the envelope, those who are not sitting silently while their rights are eviscerated, the young and old who are giving us hope, even those who are criticized, those who are criticized on radio, those who are criticized in the House of Assembly. History will be kind to you. But more than this, we have to make the present also be kind to you, because you are playing a pivotal role in the preservation of your way of life. So there is hope. The question is, how many are being inspired by these examples of courage, profiles in courage, if I may borrow a term from a book about John F. Kennedy. So let us go forth confident that there is hope, even if progress appears to be minimal, even if sometimes we are besieged by despair. There is reason to believe that we should be very bullish about our future. So I say good evening to your listeners. I wish them well. I hope they take courage in what they're doing, what some others are doing, and I hope they take courage in the fact that inevitably Dominica will rise again and live up to its potential. So thank you once again, Mr. G, and
Yes.
your listeners, and everyone who made this show happen this evening.
Yes, and I thank you so much, Irving, and thank you, Lennox, as well. I mean, and Gabriel for really taking the time to be here tonight again, and for us to speak to our folks, our
Thank
Kalinago
you.
Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters at home and abroad. It seems to me it's important for us to maintain that dialogue, because it is clear that the Dominicans abroad have a vested interest in Dominica. If you're going to be spending $50 million every year sending home, you obviously have an interest in the well-being and the welfare of your people. I think it's
Indeed.
important for us. Yeah. So yes, I think it's all important for us that we all make a contribution, and therefore it might make it life a little easier on all of us if we were to help to improve the living standards and quality of life of the people who live on the island. So I think it is important for to make everybody understand that if you're better off if you develop the skills and you have the wherewithal and you have the enabling environment that allows you to help yourself and to prosper, rather than to wait on the whims and fancies of some politician to give you something now and then. Nothing wrong with some getting something now and then, but I don't think your life should depend on that. And therefore, I think what we should do is the right thing, like the other countries in the Caribbean are doing. You change your government from time to time. So you keep the governments on their toes, so they know you're not going to be there forever. Do the most you can while you're there, because you know you're going to have to will and come back again another time. Because if you don't do the best that you can now, we're not going to bring you back. The fact of the matter is, I don't think this government is doing the best it can right now, because too many people are suffering, too many people under economic stress and duress. I think it's time for us to take stock. I'm just really saying this because of what the caller asked. How long? It really depends on the Dominican people who, in a democracy, to decide how long are they going to wait before they decide to put in there to create that enabling environment. So, gentlemen, I want to thank all of you
Thank you.
for being with us on Facebook and listening and so on. Thank you so
Hello,
much for being with us tonight. And let me say good night to everybody.
at
Lambi
my home.
Showing, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, guys. Take
Good
care.
night, everybody. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you very
okay.
much. God
Good night,
bless.
everyone. God
God
bless.
bless you.
All right. Take care.
Gabriel, my condolences on the passing of your neighbor. Yeah.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, guys, see you leave.
All the best.
All right, Dr. Andre. Take
Take
care.
care.
All the best,
Gabriel,
bro.
Lennox,
Take care. Take care.
Sheridan, Lambi, Sherwin.
Island Dominica Civil Liberties Foundation, Inc.